just a bit. Hello, hello. We are live. It is Monday. Happy Monday, Monday Jumpstart, one of our favorite days of the week. We are here for Monday Jumpstart. And it says there are a couple people waiting, but I don't see anybody yet, but they'll come in soon. Meanwhile, that'll give me just a moment to get my camera zoomed in just a tiny bit. I need to fix this. Let's see here. Yeah, that should be better. All right. Okay, so if you are joining us again, joined us before, we welcome you back. We are always so happy to have you here. We'd have no reason to be here if you weren't here. Hi, Glynis. Love working with watercolors. Good. I'm so glad that you're here. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We are so happy that you found us. This is Happy Paper People. We also have a Facebook group, Happy Paper People with Marianne, the same name. Find us on Facebook. Join us there. It is a safe place to post your work, to learn, to grow, to help each other. We learn so much from each other, and we welcome all kinds of art in the Facebook group. We love all artists, crafters of all different styles, because we believe that we can be inspired by everything around us, nature and other people's art. It doesn't always have to be the exact same thing, the exact same type of art. So, Glynis, do you have your watercolors ready to go? And are you going to work with us today? Are you going to make some watercolor? Oh, there's Sarah. Hello, Sarah. Sarah SBS Cozy. Welcome. So glad to see you. Are you at work today? Or just have us in your ear? Or are you home and able to play along? Because this is a fun one. This is a super, super fun one. Let me show you some of these up close so you can kind of see what we're doing. We are making feathers. And I'm going to take this just for a minute here. I'll show you some samples and then tell you a little bit about them. There are several different ways to get to the end result, and I'm going to show you different ways to do that. But the feathers are just fun to make. Feathers with doodles.
Glennis says she's playing along. She says,
yay!
Yep.
Awesome. I'm so glad. I made a whole bunch of samples because I was trying out some different things. There's with some metallic watercolors underneath that one. I wanted to see if it made a difference if I used a little less expensive watercolor paper, or a paper that maybe wasn't even exactly watercolor paper. Hi, Ricky. Welcome. So glad that you're here watching from the car. Or if it made a difference if I use a lower quality paint, watercolor paint. Yeah. Okay. So there is a difference. I did find a difference. And so a couple of these you may be thinking, oh, that's not all that great. And that would be because it might be one of the lower quality. Like this one, for example. I love the feather, but then the white, this is gel pen doodles over it. The white gel pen would not doodle properly. So I ended up going over it 2 or 3 times, just trying to be able to see the white, because it would go over it and not leave any ink. And then it just ended up getting all, I don't know, not so crazy about it anymore. It looks a little mushed up and, not very neat. So this one,
I think I like it.
Do you? This one, yeah. I loved the color that I got with the watercolors in the background. And I thought, I'm going to try gold. I'm going to try gold gel pen on it, which doesn't show up very well on camera. There we go.
Oh, yeah, I can see it there.
There we go. Just got to get the right angle there. So that is gold gel pen, which ends up being like a metallic shiny. That looks pretty cool. The color on the back was really, really awesome for that. So some of them have a lower quality paint, some of them have a lower quality paper, and I did notice quite a difference. Here's another one where the gel pen just wasn't writing well, and I had to go over it and over it. I loved the color of the flower, and then thought, now I have to go over that so many times. That one went over pretty well. So get a chance to play with all those fun doodles that you've learned. But let me show you like this one. This was a much better quality watercolor paper than those. And this was Daniel Smith ink. So I don't know if it was just the paper or the ink and the paper. But I suspect that just having a better quality paper made a difference. And maybe if it's on a lesser quality paper, maybe having the better quality ink makes a difference. I don't know. So you can see that Carrie's with me today. And here's DM. She is also jumping in with us today. Hi, DM.
Hi. I was in the link. For some reason, it never let me in for you.
No, I never could see you. So you had to go out and do it again?
Yeah. I was sitting there waiting for you to let me in.
I figured you'd have been waiting. Now, this is one that I've made into a bookmark. I decided that I'm going to, for Christmas, just make a simple bookmark with these on for everyone in my book club. So I didn't put an eyelet in here yet because I think I might laminate it. That way,
I was going to say,
having a cup of tea or something, and something gets spilled on it, it's not going to ruin it.
You want to protect it, laminate it, yes,
and wipe it off. So I'm going to take the tassel off, laminate it, and then put the hole in the laminate, and then just put an eyelet in and put the tassel back on. That's a fun way to give an inexpensive gift to a bunch of people, but have it also be a piece of art from you, directly from you. We're going to do it a couple of different ways. Now, here's a couple that have not yet had the doodles put on them, just so you can kind of see some stages. And then I'll show you the stages, the steps, how we do this. We'll do it one way first, and then we'll talk about some different things and variations that you can do along the way. But this is super fun, as I said. And as I was doing this, I was thinking, wow, how fun would this be to do with pan pastels or with pastel sticks? Or I didn't try it with the watercolor ink, the liquid ink, but that should work just the same. But it's even some of our other media that we have. I thought this will be fun to use, to do it with all different kinds of media. So I'm going to start with I think this is a 9x12. Now, if I want to do bookmarks, then I'm going to pre-cut it. And so I get them the right size. And so these are about 2x7 for the bookmarks. And I'll just rounded the corners. That's all. So I'm going to pre-cut it because even if I don't do bookmarks, if I end up cutting them out, because cut out like this, I can use them as collage fodder. I could put them on a belly band. I could put them on anything to decorate. They're on watercolor paper, so they're nice and thick and sturdy, other than the quill down here. Is that what that's called? That, got to be a little bit careful of because it gets thinner. It's your birthday, Sarah. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
So did you take the day off? Good for you. That's awesome.
Yay!
Okay, this is 9x12. Here's how I'm going to get the most out of it. I want these to be 7 inches by 2 inches wide each. And if I decide to cut it out, fussy cut it and use it otherwise, I can still do that. But if I cut it in 7x2 pieces, it's ready to go for bookmarks and anything else that I decide to do with that. So because I know it's 9 wide, if I turn around and make this 7 inches or high, however you want to call that, it's 9 this way. If I make it 7 this way, then I'm cutting off a full strip on the bottom instead of cutting a bunch of 2-inch strips and then cutting a little square off the bottom. If I do this, then this piece that I cut off the bottom, I can get another 7-inch piece out for one more bookmark. So that was my thought in that. So now this is 7 inches by 12. So now I'll just take it and cut this into 2-inch strips. And if they're not exactly 2 inches, doesn't matter. A bookmark doesn't have to be exactly 2 inches. Not even critical that they're all the same exactly, because not like they're going to be held like a deck and need to fit together. So pretty quick to take this. Now, different sheets of watercolor paper in different packs might be different sizes. So just kind of look at it and see where you can get the most out of it. This is, I want to say it is 140 pound, 300 GSM is what I'm using. And that's what I used on this last one I showed you, that I really liked the way it turned out, the paper. Now, here's my last scrap, my last edge, and I'm going to hang on to that. So I don't know that brand is so important. This is not one of the highest quality brand, or not that it's not high quality, but it's not one of the best known brands, the pack this came out of, but it is 300 pound, 140 GSM. And I think that it's the weight. Oh, I didn't cut that one. More the weight or the heft of that paper that's going to make it easier to work with. Ricky going to try this on my real turkey feathers. Ricky, I have some feathers, and I thought about trying it on some of them. And wouldn't that be cool, especially with the metallics? And what I wanted to show you, in fact, let me grab those, because sometimes we look at something like this and we're like, how do I draw those little, grooves and cutouts in there? How do I know? And everybody's like, oh, mine doesn't look like a feather. Well, I'm going to show you some feathers, and these are all real feathers, because the point is, all feathers don't look the same. All feathers look different. And so when you make your feather, don't think, oh, it doesn't look like hers, or it doesn't look like hers, so it doesn't look real, because that's actually just really not true. And so I can leave this like this, and you could use this as a visual for how to cut out some of these, or you can just do this and kind of pull them back together, however you like there. There are some feathers that only have a lot of feather on one side of the quill. There are others that have it up both sides. The smaller the feather is, the more they tend to be furry, have this down that goes farther up the quill before you get to that. So you could even do that. So that's enough to give you a good general idea. And that's only a few chicken feathers. So if you look at the turkey feather, like Ricky, you probably got some great big, beautiful turkey feathers. If you have pheasant feathers, if you just look at any of the feathers, you can see that the different shapes, some of them are more rounded on top like this. I wanted to try that because I don't ever get chicken feathers that look like that. These are rounded, but they're pretty slender and round. They're not that nice big kind of bulb thing on the top. So I just wanted to try different types of feathers and have them all looking different. So these are probably more common of the type that I would see. So the point is, though, that you can draw your feather, and whatever your feather looks like, it's going to look like a feather. It does not need to look like anybody else's, and there isn't a specific, it should be like this or should be like that to look like a feather, because feathers are like people. No two are the same. So we'll take one of these and we'll start with this. And this is where we need our pencil. And I need an eraser. You might not need an eraser, but I have a good eraser on that fat pencil there. And all you do is draw your feather, and draw it very lightly. I may get it a little heavier so you can see the line, but I try to draw it as light as possible. And you can always go back and erase it. But if I draw it super light, you usually can't end up seeing it anyway. But having this cut in 2-inch strips also helps me to stay within a parameter. Otherwise, when I have a big sheet, it's easy for me to start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm just kind of that way. I want to make sure I leave enough space up here to punch a hole if I might want to use it as a bookmark. And I need to leave enough on the bottom to put that bottom portion of the quill. So Okay, so, and I can't seem to do the other direction very well from top to bottom, so I just flip it over to get my other side. And that one is a little wonky as far as balance. It's wider on the bottom over here, lesser on the top. So if I do this, I often see feathers that are not even on the top. They kind of end up going one direction or the other. The bottom's usually pretty much the same though. So I'm going to adjust the base of it a little bit. That's why I use pencil. And if there's something about the top that you'd like to change, you can adjust that too. But it's kind of fun to have all different types of feathers that don't all look exactly alike. Okay, so once you've got your shape like that, just a basic shape, wild turkeys that eat my flowers. Wow. Then you can come back and make some little splits if you want in the feathers. You do not have to. Not all feathers show them. You can always make them in a feather just by sticking your finger in there. But we can come back and we can do, all you do is pick a spot, like I want it right here. Just draw your split in here like a deep V. Okay, and then you erase the line where the split would be. And now you have a split. That's all you do. Super easy to do that. I'm going to do another. I'm going to try to make this one maybe a little bit longer and pointier. And let's see. That would go from above. Let me think which way I want it. Okay, so if I erase that right there. Okay, so there's another split down there. So maybe I'll put one over on the other side just so it's not, you know, I'm going to round this out a little bit more because the other side's rounder and I like that it was a little wonky. But now I've put two splits on that side, so it seems a little bit weighted to that side. So if I make this side just a little bit rounder, it'll bring the weight back to this side. Okay, and so I can put one split over here. And if you wanted to, you could even, oops, just randomly draw on it. If you wanted to, you could take the point of this one and make it come even up here a little higher. So it kind of sticks out like that. We saw one on the real feathers that was doing that. So you can do anything you want with those. Get creative. Sometimes the tip is pulled out and the end of the feather ends up being like two points. So, okay, so there is our feather right there in a nutshell. And now we're going to paint it, and then we'll talk about some other ways that you can do it. So 2 brushes, I mentioned to bring 2 brushes. You don't have to have 2 brushes. You could do it with 1. I like 2 because 1 I will get only in the water, and the other one I'll use for the painting portion of it. And they don't have to be any particular size. This is a 12, and I find if I get much bigger than a 12, that it's a little more difficult to stay in the line. And this is one I do want to stay in the line, especially with the water. So what I'm going to do is get my brush wet, fully saturated here, and I'm going to paint the feather just with the water. And I want to stay in the line because this water is going to help the paint stay right there. You know, sometimes you look at something and you're like, well, how did they make the watercolor stay there and not go outside at all? Well, I put this water down first. It does exactly that. So I'm just going to paint the feather, and I'm going to try to stay in the line. This is one way of doing this. And all I want to do is get a nice coverage with water. I go a little slower and more careful as I hit the points as well as the edge. That's why this round brush with a nice point is helpful. Not necessary. You could do this with a flat brush if you needed. And my water bled over just a little bit right there into our split. I'm going to try to remove it because I don't want that split to get covered with paint. Defeats the purpose of the split. All right, so come down here and finish. And you'll notice as you're doing this that you have a sheen on your paper, even as the water starts to dry, as it will fairly quickly. So I want to do this as quickly as possible. Okay. Down here to the bottom. We turn it around and just hit this edge. Here we go. Okay, so once you've got that all done, then you can pick it up and look at it, and you can see a nice sheen on it. So you can see if you missed any spots. If you did, just go back and touch those. Or some spot is weirdly completely dry already, which it shouldn't be already. A little bit dry up there. Okay, so that is, I'm going to keep that as clean water to do that with. And now I'm ready to paint it. So now I'm going to take the smaller of these two brushes. This one is an 8. And any size will work. Any size that you can control will work. Even a smaller one than that will work. It's totally up to you. I'm not super proficient with these, so I don't want one that I want one that's large enough, but not too big. It's harder for me to stay in the lines. So go ahead and get it nice and wet, saturated, and then choose a color of paint. We're basically going to use 2 colors. And, you know, once you do this, you find that you can use as many, if you have a color combination that you want to put in that's 2 or 3 colors. You could even do it with 1. And the only difficulty with 1 is if I was doing it with 1, I kind of want it to be lighter, you know, in some areas and darker in the others. You want to keep in mind that you do want it to be dark enough that you can write on it, doodle on it with your white gel pen. Although I have some that I have doodled on with black gel pen. And as it's drying as I'm talking, because I'm not getting right to it, I'm going to pick this up so that you can see the marks, the lines there. So as I bring the water in or bring the paint in where there's still water there, it just drew the paint right to the edge of the water. My water is drying because I'm talking instead of just doing it super quickly. But it will pull the paint right up to the edge of the water. I could grab the other brush and put some more water on here. And I'm not worried about making perfectly straight lines on the side because that's not how feathers are. At least the ones that I have that I'm looking at. And I'm just kind of, this is Payne's Gray, so I'm just going to kind of get it, you know, here and there and everywhere, and knowing that I'm going to put a second color on. And so I want to leave room for the second color without just having to overlap them and have mud, you know, everywhere. That is not as pointy as I would like. It's a little sloppy with that. Okay. So yes, I'm keeping in mind that I want it to be dark enough that I can doodle on it with the gel pen. I really like the white, but I do, whoops. Apparently I can't do that in the air. And And if you go outside the line, don't worry about it. If it wipes off, great. If it doesn't, just adjust your line. Make that base a little bit bigger. I'm just using a Kleenex to try to pull that off. I like the look of the white gel pen as you doodle on them. I do have a couple of light ones that I did black gel pen, and that worked well as also. And now there's part. I'm going to leave that and then grab a second color to put with it. And I can see places where I'll probably want to darken it up so that I make sure I can doodle on it and have it come through.
So have you got your second color already on there?
No, I know that I still have some paint. Now, here's the thing. I don't like to waste paint. So
Right.
no, I've still got Payne's Gray in here. And being a more expensive brand, I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to go grab this extra offcut piece that I had. And I'm going to just spritz the whole thing down because I'm not going to draw a feather on it. I'm going to take it to the side so I don't spritz everything. I'm just spritzing that down. And then I'm going to use this extra Payne's Gray on here. And then afterwards, I can come back and actually add more. But right now, I'm just kind of cleaning off my brush. And so I can move to my second color for this. But here's an example of when this was Payne's Gray with probably burnt umber.
That looks cool.
A couple others. Now I can draw a feather on these and doodle and just cut them right out. Or I can cut it in half and make 2 mini feathers. I could do flowers or any of the other things that we do for the collage fodder. Here's a larger one that is just cleaning brushes on. I just don't like to waste that paint, and it always ends up looking so cool. Oh, so here's a little one. This was an offcut. And so I did that back there. And then I just drew a little, started out as a feather. And then I thought, oh, that's just a cool leaf. It's a large leaf, but it's a cool leaf.
Oh, nice.
And I even love the color outside around it. So I didn't even cut it out yet. I'm not sure, but I will. Depends how you use it, I guess. So those offcuts make great art as well. And there's quite a bit of ink still in. I mean, you'd be surprised how much ink is still in your brush. So I'm going to get this, trying to get as much of the ink out as possible just so I don't waste it. And that's
paint.
Sorry, paint. Thank you. Thank you.
It is basically an ink, I guess.
Because there's watercolor ink and there's watercolor paint, and we are
true. That's what I should be using today. Is my watercolor inks.
So I'm going to go in here and clean it, and now I'm thinking about a second color to go with that. I have not tried a red, so that may just end up being totally, I don't know what, but I'm going to try a red with it. This Payne's Gray with a red. Now, I know because I'm talking and I'm not just working straight through this, that this is drying out, because I know that. I'm going to grab the other brush and splatter water all over the edge. The only reason I don't want water out there is because it will pull the paint out there. But I'm just going to get a little more water in this area. I'm not worried about covering all of it exactly. Just get some in there that will start to pull the paint. Any area that is still open without paint. And some of the spots are lighter and some are darker. And right now I'm not too worried about it because the other color that comes in may go over some of the lighter, and I may like that look. It may make a mud, but that may look cool with those two colors. Who knows? But later I can come in and make that a little darker if I wanted the Payne's Gray darker. So I am going to go out, what seems to me, going out on a limb here and trying the red. Just because I'm unfamiliar with it, it seems a little risky, but may not be. I just may not know. All right, so then I'm just going to come in here where I have the water, and all I have to do is touch the brush to it, and paint comes off, and it starts spreading. And so for starters, that's all I want to do is just to get some paint down. And I really like when it starts spreading naturally. And that's the good reason to have all that water on there, because it makes it spread very organically. And sometimes if there's a lot, I'll even turn it up, like this and let it, if I've got a lot of paint there and not as much water, I'll just go grab some more water with this brush because there's still plenty of paint on it. And I can get up to those edges. I haven't done this in the air before, so I'm going to try not to drop it. But if I do, it's only watercolor, right?
Right.
Watercolor.
Yeah, really all you have to do is add water now, is because you've got plenty of
plenty of paint
there.
That's a striking combination.
I always, whenever I'm painting anything with watercolor, I start out so light you can barely see any color on the paper.
Well, I tried to, but grabbing off the edge of this, there wasn't much edge there. It just, it came in. And there's are really, I'm noticing that they are really highly pigmented, much more so than some of my lesser expensive. I got a lot of cheap watercolor sets that are just fun to play around with, that I don't worry about wasting. I don't worry about wasting the watercolor, the paint, or my money, because I can try things, I can play around because I know that they're cheap. But I'm noticing this little more expensive brand is much more highly pigmented.
And
you
once
can use less and add more water.
Yes.
Yes, and once those dry in your pan, you'll have much more control over how much
good point. Very good point.
Paint you get on your brush.
That is true. Because I have just squeezed those into the pan. So this is a pan that I got off of Amazon. I do have some other brands that are in tubes, and I figured one of these brands, they're cheaper, but I figured one of the brands I would get enough to squeeze them in here and make my own palette with it, rather than always having to squeeze the tubes onto something, because this can dry up. I'm sure y'all know it's watercolor reactivated by water, so this can dry up completely and then come back next time with your wet brush. Now see, it's dripping, it's running down to the end. Not dripping, it was running down to the end and starting to run out. So I'm just going to try to reestablish a little point there. But also, where I got some really cool looks, different times, different paints, was just bringing a tissue in here. Every time I dab, get a new place. But when there was a whole lot, I would just dab to pick up some, so before it ran out the edge, and it gave some really cool texture. Really did like that a lot. So I like that. That is really striking. I kind of want it to be a little bit more. I'm going to grab the one just with plain water, and I'm going to put water up here, and I'm going to hold it up in the air so it can't go that direction, and see if I can get it to organically move down a bit, so it looks more natural, not like I placed the paint there. Now, the other thing is, if I was looking at this, I'd be like, oh, that looks like a blob here and a blob there. It's kind of blobby. And it is. However, don't forget that you're going to doodle on it. And once you doodle on it, the blobs are no longer your focal point, and you don't see those blobs. You just see the color that jumps out behind your doodles. And those blobs actually are the coolest spots, because you've got, like this one, some dark blue here and some burnt umber right next to it that is also dark. If there wasn't kind of like two blobs, it wouldn't get that, but it makes for really cool color. So I'm not really super worried about blobs, because they're gonna make for cool texture behind my doodles. Okay, I am going to go ahead and, and after I throw this around, leave it. I think that at this point is bugging me. I may end up going over that with Payne's Gray after the fact, just to make it dark, although this dark red would be okay too. I do want, not a perfect point, but I want a point of some kind, because that seems to be the style of feather that I drew. Okay. And little tiny fuzzies that come off it, that's okay, because that's how real feathers are. I want to set this aside and let it dry completely. You can use your drying tool. You have done that. And that is perfectly fine. So I've got some that I did quickly last night, just so I'd have some that I knew were completely dry that we can also use to do the next step. However, before we do that, let's go over here to our offcut. I know I've still got some red. Let's see how much red I can get off of this brush. And as this is sat here, look how this Payne's Gray has kind of all muted together. It was a bunch of just blobs there, but it's now kind of all melted together. I don't have a lot of just blank spaces to bring this red in. But bringing the red in on top of or with the Payne's Gray is actually nice too. So now I want to just try to get much of this red off of the paintbrush that I can. And then when that dries and I see what I have, it always dries a little lighter than what it is when you put it down. Keep that in mind too. I can always come back and add more Payne's Gray or another color if I want. But that's a good start of a background there. So let me rinse this off. And I always keep my art towel handy. Love just adding all the stuff to the art towel, and it gets more and more colorful as we go until it's just ready to tear apart and use for art. So I'm going to grab a couple of these that I did like that, just the offcuts, and used, or even if they're not offcuts, if you do that one, and I cut, I don't know how many we got out of that one page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I cut this one down, we'd have 6 off of that one page. So as I do each of those, hi, Patty. Yes, happy birthday to Sarah. As I do each of those, I'm going to clean off the brush because I don't want to waste that paint. So I could do that on just a regular good one of these that I cut as well, and have something like this that I then want to draw a feather on. So I can either, and I could leave it like this. I could let that be a background. I could draw the feather in with white and do the doodles on it and still let it be a bookmark. It does not have to have the white background. That becomes part of the background. Or this could be one of the ones that I'm going to fussy cut out and use as a feather. So you could take a pencil if you think you can see a pencil. And actually, you probably can. Where's my pencil? Probably can. I think I like this for the top, and I may bring more in for the dark. Need to leave room for the quill at the bottom. I could probably see the pencil. Before I finalize these, I will press them. I think probably putting it through the laminator will press it. But if not, I'm going to press it down just so that they're perfectly flat. I like my bookmarks perfectly flat. But it would be helpful if I had pressed it before doing this, just so it would lay flat when we're trying to do this. So I could come in like this and just draw my... If you put your hand down and literally just twist it in a half circle, not moving where your hand is, you get a great feather. It's just, don't make it more difficult than it is. Can do that. If you wanted to, you could take the white gel pen and go directly with the white gel pen. I'm going to start over here, and then I will round that base off together. And you may not be able to see this feather as I'm drawing it because it is pencil and it is pretty light. It's too neat. There we go. And they get all the way up to the top. I'm trying to see it. There we go. Okay, so you may not be able to see the pencil on there, but you know it's there. You just watched me do it. And so now, if I wanted to cut that feather out, that's my outside. And also, I can then take my, you don't want your quill on the bottom to be too thin, because remember that's going to stick out there and it makes it really easy to get torn off. But having that pencil guide line makes it real easy to then take the white gel pen. This would probably be pretty with a gold gel pen as well. The Payne's Gray and Burnt Umber. I have a 5, an 8, and that's an 8. Where's the 10? Oh, there's a 10 in here. I like the 10. Couple of things that I have found to be really important on here. Now, let me also mention before I do that, you could use a Posca. You could use a Sharpie creative marker in white. You just want to be really careful that the tip is small enough that you can control it to make small enough doodles. If the tip is even normal and you press it all and it spreads it all, then you've got, you know, big blobs and it's much harder to do the doodles. So do keep that in mind. Do the doodle. I've also noticed that I have to clean it off every now and then, just like this. Actually, I probably, no, let's see. I'll do it on that. This was cheap paper that was not good watercolor paper, and so I didn't like the way it worked on there anyway. Just to make sure if it gathers any, stutter there, gathers any paint, that comes off the end in order for it to write well. The other thing I noticed was that I have to barely press in order for it to write well. If I pressed at all or heavy even, if I pressed heavy or even at all, that it didn't write well and it would just kind of dig into the paint and scratch it, as opposed to, there was one where that was pretty obvious, as opposed to writing on top of it. And so barely pressing the gel pen down. I'm going to try to find my tip up here, and here's the center of my quill here. I'm going to draw my first line. There it is. I have to actually tilt it to see it. And I'm just literally barely doing it over the top. And that did not come through. It came through here and there. So I'm going to do it again, try to connect those. That is not always perfectly straight on a real feather. And what I was trying to say. And if you start here and you end up a little farther over to one side or the other, don't worry about that too, because I can tell you that there are real feathers that look like that as well. It's the beauty of feathers, is they're like snowflakes, and like people, there are no two alike. So I'm not going to go back and make that dark. I could later if I wanted to, but at this point, I don't really want to. I'm not sure if I will cut this out or leave it as is. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and do my outline. Just go over where I had the pencil. It is really difficult for me to not press it all. I literally have to glide it over the top of the paper without pressing it all. And I'm always heavy-handed. I recognize that I am, but this isn't even being light-handed. It is just gliding it over the top. And so that's, if you're finding that your gel pen is not wanting to write well, try gliding it where you feel like you're barely even touching the paper. Or sometimes I have to look back and say, did I even touch the paper there? Because it feels that light. I'm stopping periodically to look for the pencil line and make sure that I go in the right direction. And if it doesn't go at all, I'll just write over here to scratch off any paint that happened to get on it. this paint might have been a little bit thicker. Maybe that's why. Also, I just am really having a difficult time without pressing into it at all. But the lighter you press, the easier, the better it glides, and the better line you get. So if it doesn't work and I have to keep going over and over it, that's when it gets messy and sloppy. That's when I get frustrated with, because I don't want it to look like that now. Okay, I'm going to leave the quill for now until I decide whether I'm going to cut it out or leave it on the paper. So basically, I've just got the outline of the feather over the top of the excess. So now, and on this one, I didn't do any little cutouts because it was just a leftover piece of paper, right? Or this is not leftover. This is the same size as one of these. I was just cleaning my brush then and using a good piece of paper for a bookmark or a feather that I would cut out. So I could create some of those now if I wanted. That would be really easy to do. All you do, in fact, I'm going to do that. I will create one right here. And that'll come from up here. A nice long deep one. Okay, and when I cut it out, then I'm going to cut out that section so I don't have to worry about that line that I can't erase because it's pen. And I'm going to do another one over here. And as you're doing this part, you'll also notice that the lighter the paint, the harder it is to see the white. And so it's another reason for choosing colors or making it at least dark enough that you can see. And if you're doing it and you get half of it done and you're like, that's awful, I can hardly even see the white, then grab a black gel pen or fine point marker, and you can use a number of fine point black markers and go back over the white with the black. You just have to be really careful. If you're not right on top of it, then it's easy to get like a shadow, a double line, and then they all just become real thick and kind of can look like a mess. Okay, so now I just want to do some doodles. And you can doodle anything, any design, anyhow, anything you want. And this is always the hardest part for me, is trying to decide, what do I want to doodle? So you can pull up some Zentangles, some doodles, and take a look at them and find patterns that you like. You could get real intricate with patterns. However, this one was a little more intricate with pattern. And though I know on camera you can't really see, there's some good color behind it. But also because I had to go over it 2 or 3 times because the gel pen wasn't writing well. Or maybe I just didn't know yet that I didn't need to press it at all. I don't see as much of the color as I would like. This one, where I have simple doodles and I can see the color through, is one of my favorites because I want to see the color through. I want to see that watercolor paint. I want to see the variations and all of that. So for me, I prefer to keep them a little simpler like this, not get into real complicated doodles or tangles on the feather. The more you have, the more complicated it is, or the more marks or lines you have on there, the more difficult it is going to be to see the color through it. So I was looking for a good example. Now, and this one, that's a gold gel pen. I still haven't decided if it would look even more stunning with a white gel pen. It might. I don't know. Gold just seemed to be, the gold metallic seemed to be calling to me because of the colors that were behind it. So here's another thing. I love doing these on a tangle or a doodle. And when I did them, they just seemed like big open spaces. There just seemed like a lot of empty space in it. And so I did 3 lines, just like dotted lines that go out. And now it's almost too busy. Hey, Margie, welcome, welcome. Glad you woke up. Somebody's plucking out my feathers. Ow, ow, ow. Just trying to wake you up, Margie. And so that's almost too busy for me. So I did it not the same, but different over here, but still the big loop petals. And I decided just to put a small line on the bottom. Still seemed like there was a lot of empty space. So I put the one dot, long dot on the top of each. And that to me is still has design in it, like a tangle design, but it doesn't fill all the space and detract from the color. And that's what I'm looking for. Because when I look at this, I want to see the beautiful blue and pink jump out and then go, oh, wow, look at the cool doodle on it. So I want the color, for me, I want the color to be a focal point that comes out. So you can see how it's much easier for the darker colors to do that and to actually support the doodles you put down. I think the white looks better on the darker colors because it shows up better. So let's go ahead and doodle on this one. This should not be a super long process, just a matter of deciding what to do. I kind of look at it in sections. You could do the same doodle up one side and a different doodle up the other side. You could do top and you could do bottom. I'm kind of look at it in sections, and I've got from this guy down, it seems to be kind of a section. So I'm going to draw some lines, and I want some not quite straight lines. So I'm going to use the angle of this bottom part of the feather right there and let that be my line guide. And then also bring it down so it gets a little bit of an angle coming down. I just don't want a super straight line. And you know, if you think I can't even draw a straight line, that's a really good reason not to put straight lines on there. Let them be curved on purpose. It is still really difficult for me to know that I'm writing and barely touching it. It's just so light. I feel like I'm not even touching the paper. So, all right, there's some lines. Now, I might decide that I want to draw some circles between lines, or I might want to do some bars across two of the lines. I might, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait and see how I feel about the rest of it afterwards to see if it needs more or if it's just going to be a real simple in that way. So circles are also good. So I'm going to go start at the top here and make this section. And I don't know if I'm going to go all the way down to here or just part of it, probably all the way down here. I'm going to do circles in this section. Again, having to touch so light. And I actually have to feel like I'm holding it up off the paper to get it light enough to write. And that just seems crazy to me. I'm not pushing at all. I'm letting it make contact with the paper. And as soon as it makes contact, I have to kind of pull it back so that it doesn't make too much contact.
Oh, Margie, thank you so much.
Margie, thank you for your support.
I don't know why I can't get the comments up on my TV screen.
Oh, no.
I can see them.
I don't have them on my TV either, but I think there's a way to do it. I just haven't bothered.
Yeah, I know there is, and I thought I had it on, but for some reason it's not.
Okay. Well, that's frustrating. I know because they're on StreamYard in front of me that I wouldn't probably bother to look at the TV anyway. So, okay, sometimes when I make those circles, I'll make them different sizes, small to large, which gives a nice variation as just in that manner. These are all pretty close to the same size, not exactly. And there's quite a bit of open space there. So they seem to match with these because they're a simple design and there's a lot of open space. If I feel like there's too much open space, I will go back and put a dot in the center of each one of those, and I'll put some stripes that connect some of these. So let me think what we're going to do on the right-hand side here. How about some of those big loopy flower things? I really like those. There's a couple of ways to do them. if I do it, let's see here. I could do it as it comes down, or I could do it a flower across the quill. I think I'm gonna do it not as a flower. I'm just gonna do the design, and so I've got more space on this side than I had on the left, and I'm gonna start. Where am I gonna start? About right here. I'm gonna do lots of these, which is totally fine with me because I like them. Halfway through, it stops writing, and I know I'm pushing too hard. I literally have to pull my hand back, and I keep wondering, is it even touching the paper? But it is.
You can't feel it,
right? Because it's so light. It doesn't make sense to me, but it works. The Sharpie or one of those, I would be making much more contact with the paper. The only problem with that is typically they have a fatter end and make for a much thicker line. So it all depends on what you're doodling, so what kind of line you want or are okay with. Okay. And let's see. I'm going to go ahead and fill this space. And once I've pushed too hard, it's gotten a little bit of paint on it. I have to get that paint off, because then the white can't come out anyway. It's got paint on it. That's just so counterintuitive for me. That's why this is good practice for me, because it goes against what my brain says is logical to happen. It's not scientific. It's opposite day.
When I was a kid, I used to love opposite day.
Right? Okay. So far, all of our designs are big, open patterns that allow for room to do something inside of them. So now you want your feather to look balanced. Some of you have a lot more education in art than I do. For those who don't, I'll just share a couple of things. I've got something round here. Well, I started out with lines, which is why I wanted something round here. So it's not just same lines all the way up, but they have contrast, so they balance. And then over here, I've got something that's soft and rounded. So up here, I want something with lines. It's a little straighter to kind of balance that. That's kind of between those two. So I'm going to go up here, and I think, how am I going to do this? I think I am going to get this section here as well as up top, because it's not that big of a section. And I'm going to start right between those flower petals, or whatever they are. This seems like a petal design to me. Oh, come on. And I'm going to hope that my pen will write. I'm not pushing, I promise. Please write. Like, I can tell when you're pushing, lady. I can feel it. You can't fool me. Should probably bring a second pen out. Let's see if the 5 or the 8 will work. This pen's getting a little frustrated with me pushing too hard. Let's try this 8. It's going to be a thinner line. So partly I like the 10 because it's nice and visible. It's thicker in terms of pen lines, but it's not thick in terms of art and what we're doing with the paint. Okay, so that brings those up. And now I'm going to go ahead and leave it this way and connect all these on the top as well. Okay, let's see. And they are kind of slanted this way. So I'm going to keep that continuing. Come on. And one more. Okay. All right. So all the designs we have on here are big, open designs, nothing small. So if I look at it now and say, I'd really like some more specific design, now I can go back inside. So I could go to the dots or the circles and just put a dot, maybe. Actually, with that one, I do find it helpful to have like this Sharpie or a Posca pen, because I don't really have to draw a dot. I can just touch the center and get just as much or just enough on there. This is a Sharpie. They are acrylic paint. So technically, there is acrylic paint on top of my watercolor. Look at that. Not only are you a mixed media artist, but you're a multi-talented paint mixer. Okay, so right there we can see a difference just by putting the dot in. And then we've got these other spaces. So this one with the soft petals is pretty large. So I don't want to do anything that's super small. I'm going to go ahead and just do those lines. And I'm really going to have to barely touch with this one because it is a much heavier point. I'm trying to get them to go out of here and trying to be careful because I'm making them thicker, not on purpose, but because it's just a much thicker. It's a brush tip. And if you push a brush tip at all, it goes wider. It's soft. So a brush tip, you really have to feel like you're just gliding over the top, not touching it, because the tip of the brush is actually touching it. All right, so I've just done one thing up the middle there. You can see then already it feels a little more cohesive, filled in, like it's an intentional doodle. I can go back and put a dot on the end of these, and I think I will. That will help those to feel completed. I can do, actually, I'm going to do a dash, dots and dashes. So it's like a spread out dot. Okay. Now there's not much doodle inside of those rounded petals, but what there is covers enough space or draws your eye to enough area that they appear to be full. They have a nice design in them, but they aren't just full of of some design that just takes up a lot of space. So you can see already what that does to it, just putting the dots inside the circles and the petals. So now we've got these groupings of lines to deal with. And I want to make sure that I'm not that thick as I do those. So a lot of things you can do with these groupings of lines. Let's see. We can take them, and I'll just take these two and draw. Oh, come on, pen. Of course, this is one I've been using forever, so it is possible that it is out of ink. Look at that, nothing coming out at all. So it might very well be out of ink. So I'll go to this 8. This doesn't work. I've got another pen, 10 behind me in the pouch. Okay, so I'm just going to draw 2 lines. It's like an equals sign. But if I just do a whole bunch of those, it'll just look like jail bars. So I'm going to do 2 lines and skip a big space and do 2 more. Again, what I'm doing is committing to the fact that there is design there while leaving this space open enough that you can see the color underneath it. The design becomes a beautiful surprise and not the focal point. When done right, it appears that the entire feather is the focal point, and one has to stop and look specifically at the color and the doodles to kind of separate them, because it's just beautiful all together. Okay, so see those lines? 2 together like an equal sign, and then a big space, and then 2 more. Also, you can see where I did them this one. On the next row, I tried to offset them somewhat. It gets harder as they get smaller. It gets harder as they curve, because they end up overlapping in spatial, in that spatial area. As they curve, they're going to curve into the next one's space that you would have put that. So, but just trying to space them apart gives a little bit better visual. So the only thing that doesn't have any design really on it is this section up here with the lines. And you can see now that we've got design everywhere else that that section really looks like it's missing something. So we can do a lot of things up there. We could draw circles in between them. I don't really want to do that because we've got circles right there. We could draw the lines, which we've got there. You could draw lots of lines. I don't want to cover up the color. I really do love the color. And I don't want to do the same thing as down here, just add more lines. So this is where I would pull out a tangle book and look at different patterns and tangles to see if there's one that I can adapt to this, or look at some feathers I have previously done. Or what did I do on long lines like that? This one, I just left it because the color was so great behind it, and these lines were really close together. These are really far apart. So looking for any idea of design that we could do. This one has these little X's down here. We could just do some like hashtag almost across the line for design across there. This one got turned into squares. Had the long lines, and then it was turned into squares. That's an option. And if it's not cohesive enough with the rest of it, you could put a dot inside the squares. We could do dashes. That's an infinity sign. And then this one started out as the separation financials. And it had big gaps between it because of the shape of the feather. And I thought, well, I've got this straight lines here, and I've got straight lines here. And with these little hashtags. So we put hearts on those. So you can turn them into vine-like things, little vine-likes. So why don't we do that? I was going to just put dots on them, but we've got dots across the way. So that kind of, I know I might be belaboring this point, but a lot of people, the biggest thing I hear with stuff like this is, I don't know how to decorate it. I don't know how to, draw a doodle. So just trying to give you some ways to look at how to put something on there that you will like. Instead of doing dots, I'm just doing triangles. It ends up being the same thing as just putting dots on there, but the triangles offset the circles. A dot next to a circle would just be too much. Too much dotness, too much circleness. So, and then I'm offsetting these. And some of them will come to the point where they are partly on, partly off. And let's see. Okay, that's where we're going to get cut out right there. So I need to come over to the other side. That would be, I could leave that because that would be the edge. The one that's the edge, you could put some on or not, because it's going to get half cut off, at least half cut off, when you cut that little strip out. So this goes really quickly, as long as you can offset. All right, so we added some little triangles there. So now it looks like it's just as decorated as the other sections. And it's done. Done, ready to go. I will draw a little quill down here because it's outlined in white. I can go ahead and do this. Once you cut this out, honestly, I mean, you are not stuck with it exactly as it is. If you want to take colored pencils and darken some area, if you want to take acrylic paint and darken some area, you could. All right, well, that's enough line that I could follow it with scissors. So now all I'm going to do is grab the scissors and start cutting it out. And I probably don't fussy cut like you're supposed to. There's not a supposed to in art. I grab and I do it in sections and from where it's the easiest. I think I'm going to leave that white line on since we did that all the way around it, and it might act as a little border or highlight. If not, I can cut it off, or it will end up getting partly cut off as I'm going anyway. So cut out these two sections. Some things, by the way they are shaped, are much more difficult to grab and just go all the way around and come out the other end. Sometimes they just don't work that way. So, all right, I'm going to cut that off there because this is that little spot where we created a break in the feathers. So I'll just go in to that, and I'll come back out, and I'll go in the other side. And pull that out, and there's our little cut in the feathers. Now I can continue right down the side of the feather. Now the beauty of doing it this way is you don't have to worry about being in the lines of the feather. You can get the ink anywhere you want, knowing that it's going to get cut off. You could also do that if you started with the same size and shape paper, and you know that you're going to cut it out. And when we drew our feather and then we painted it, you could draw your feather, and then when you paint it, you don't need to worry about the edges. I was trying to stay within the edges so that I could use it as a bookmark, and I wanted a white background. But you don't even have to stay within those white edges if you're going to cut it out. Just get your color on the paper. Okay, I'm going to cut this a little bit thicker on the base so it doesn't get broken off. But then that's something that you can always trim up later if you decide, oh, I want that a little bit thinner or a little bit shorter. You can say a little bit longer, but not sure you'll be able to do that once you've cut it out. Okay, coming up to the end. All right, so I can see that this is the point. That's where the point ends right there. So let me cut out from there. And I'm taking off my glasses because I'm really struggling to see that faint pencil in the bright light. Okay, so that was the point. This is the top right here. It's a little awkward to cut on the left side, but for me, that works best. So I'm going to take that, and I know that's where it starts. Where did it go? Oh, you know what? It isn't. It's right there. I can see the circle there. But I just cut this one. At least I didn't go down in. So let me see if I can do that. And I can. All right. So when I was painting, I left this blank because I saw that line there. And I thought that line was part of the opening. It wasn't. So this should continue up to there. And that's the feather line. Unless, did I do two? Did I do two on that side? Maybe I did. Anybody remember? I might have done two on that side because I rarely would do two, one on each side. No, it's almost always, if there's one on one side, I'll do two on the other for balance. All right, I'm going to get by here. You know, because we're talking through this, it's been a long time since I actually drew that. I should remember. I think I did. I think I did 3 because there's only one on this side, that one, and then one just a little bit below it. All right. That's why I left that white, because that wasn't part of the flower. So that would be right there. And even if you hadn't done any at all, and you get up here and you go, oh, I forgot that I wanted to do that. You still can. Just like this, pick wherever you want it and just cut. It does not have to be drawn in ahead of time. I just plain can't see on that side because of the reflection. So I'm coming to the back because I can see where that cut should go to meet the other one. And then when I pull it out and get in here, so I might even have been too far up on that one too. Just couldn't see it in the reflection because these two are pretty close together. But that happens too. All kinds of weird things happen. So this one needs paint because, is that the one? Yeah. Because I didn't get all the way over. I'll just put a little bit on there. I want it to be kind of dark. Okay, so I'm giving it a puddle because I want it to be dark. So as that puddle dries, it'll be a little bit darker. Okay, so rinse that off. Okay, so now this is the one we were just working on. So also I'm looking at this and going, that quill is really light. It's not very supportive as the base. So I can get a little more burnt umber, or if that's not dark enough, I can get some Payne's gray. There's a nice puddle on there too. Maybe I let that puddle dry before I decide if it needs a little more. If I end up going over the whole thing, probably going to need to redo the white. You know, if you go over the whole thing with a different color. So it's better to get these spots darkened up before you start your doodling. All right, so that's the one we just did. How are you guys doing? Love to see what you've got going.
I'm doing great.
Let's see here.
I've got some ideas for people.
Struggling to get my white pen to work.
Oh,
Well,
are you heavy-handed like me?
yeah.
Yeah, and then once it digs up some paint, it's harder to get it to work. But it's a good exercise for me in learning to be more light-handed.
Definitely.
Can I show them a technique, Marianne?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can barely see it on this one.
Mm-hmm.
But you see there's scratches
Mm-hmm.
in it
Like,
doing
yep.
the feather things.
Yep.
I'll show you guys how to do that. I will, just so you can see, because I did these all freehand. I will sketch out a feather really easily. Okay, and we're going to make the quill go down like that. So what you do is you get water in your brush and you choose a base color. Let's make this one yellow. No, I have the yellow one up there. Let's make this one purple, but really light purple. So in my thing here, I have this purple, but I have all this extra space over here. I want this the wateriest purple that you possibly can get. So you're going to take and you're just going to keep slathering water on there so that it's very loose. then what you're going to do is you're just going to start bringing in from the outside edge in big swipes with your round brush, and follow that, and see how you're making the splits in it already.
Yep. Nice. And by allowing it to be darker on some and lighter on some, it helps to see the separation.
Right. Well, this is just the base. This
Right.
is just the base. And actually you can put more in it, but it's what I'm going to do next that will make the next coat that I put on.
So instead of doing two colors that are kind of side by side and overlap, she's doing a full base of one color.
What, very, very light as you can get it.
But now that
so I'm going to let that.
Go ahead.
Yep. I'm going to let that dry just a tiny, tiny bit, because then I'm going to go and grab my something to scratch with. Okay. So I'm going to use my glass pen right here.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm going to do now is I am going to do my feather. So I'm going to make my center.
Hello, Miss Sylvia.
And that's going to bring some lines down. And you're not doing it too bad. You know, you're not. So then you're going to just start bringing it around, right? Because that's what the feather. And then you're going to make your little divot where you see a natural divot. And what it's doing is it's tearing up the paper just enough for you to get some watercolor into that divot to make it change color.
That'll make it a little darker down on those divots. That's a cool technique.
Yep. Now, and then what you do is once you've done this, you let it dry just a little bit more because it really is too wet for this. Then you go back with your second color. And you can see how I started pulling it in from here over the so I'm going to make another big puddle of, and I'll use this one right here, another big puddle of a watercolor, and you're going to pull it in and see how it highlights all of those scratches that you've put in, and it makes them deeper, and you can actually see.
Now, one thing to note, when you do this technique, she has chosen the second color to be one that is going to work well with the first one. This is much more important. This technique makes it much more important of your choices of color, because they're going on top of each other, and you don't want to end up with just mud, unless you do want to end up with mud color.
Well, and if
that's common too.
Right, and if you let it dry, also it won't necessarily end up in mud. This ended up muddy because I was doing yellow, blue, and purple. I didn't do scratches with this one, but then I wanted gold on it, so I actually went through the whole thing again, put the gold on, and will come back in with some of the blue on just the tips. And you know how feathers, one of the things with feathers, and I can do this probably pretty quickly because that one's pretty dry. Once again, I take it to my watercolor. I put as much water in it as I can. Watercolor straight is not fun. So then what you're going to do is, I want stripes in this. You know how some feathers are striped?
Yep, I have striped feathers and polka dotted feathers.
So I'm just going to pull stripes in with the flat of my round brush.
Okay.
And then you start pulling it up like this and make your
thing.
So you end up with stripes. And I don't know if this was one of the blues that I was working with, but you end up with stripes. And then from there, if you want a darker color to get some of those stripes in with little nubs at the end, you just take the very tip of your round brush and you just start drawing lines.
Nice.
Okay, I will send you.
Nice.
I need a couple things.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
The one thing that I did not do on this one that I thought I would do it later and see what difference it made was put this little, there's always these little down part of feathers at the bottom. There's always a little down.
Those are super easy to do.
Yeah, they definitely are. But you can see on all of them, there's just, and
you have to make sure you're using the very, 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 very tip, or you have to get your liner brush. You can really do it with a liner.
I didn't even get a different brush. Just use the tip, and also didn't worry about it being perfect.
That's my trouble.
So, I mean, yeah, look at this. You know, you get the picture. You know what it is,
right?
Without having to have, you know, teeny tiny wisps. Or you could do that. See, that's great, Carrie. You've got like the little Whoville head topper thing right there. I love that. There's a lot of wisps there, and that's perfect. Some of them have only a couple. Some of them have a lot. Sometimes the bigger the wing feathers don't have much at all, or they get rubbed off. These are bigger wing feathers, but the smaller the feather, the more down it has down there and going up the feather. So yeah, and it, you know, if you forget to put it on, you can do it later with paint, or you could do it with ink, or you could do it with a watercolor pencil. You could do it with all kinds of, you know, anything, really. You can mix and match anything on these. So there's a whole nother technique from DM in doing it in layers. And if you want to add scratches to give some depth when the ink gets down, the paint gets down in there, makes it nice and dark. I like that. Carrie, you want to show us what you're working on? Hold it up and we can see yours.
I gave up on the white pen and I went to silver.
Oh, there you go. Silver, gold. Yep, we are all finding out that using the gel pen, you have to barely, and did I say barely, touch it. Yeah, you have to literally glide over the top of it, wondering if you're even touching the paper for it to write. Yeah. The more you press, it's hard to do. It's a great exercise for me because I am heavy-handed. And so it is a really good exercise in hand control, doing those things for me. And I'm going to do more just because it has to teach me something there. So, okay. So we just did this one. And now I look at it and it seemed so dark when we did it, didn't it? The color on it seemed so dark. But by the time we get the gel pen on and get it cut out, it's really not that dark. So you see what I mean when you look at this one, and this seems really dark. By the time we get it done, this was dark. This is Payne's Gray and Burnt Umber, and they were really dark. So they're not so much. And now I look at it and I'm like, I'm not sure I really want that white gel pen around the edge because that's kind of framing it in white and it's already really light. And I would love to bring out some depth of that feather. So I may just take my one of my darker walnut or one of those inks and just ink the edge just to make a dark edge and get rid of that white. So some of the others, I might take a different color ink. This one went around the edge with black, actually did the whole thing in black. There was some metallic paint on that. So we had, this one is done in, that's just a gold gel pen. And some of them don't have any outline at all. And they're just fine with the ink. I mean, the paint. Some of them, I wanted to put an outline around them. They just felt like they needed it. You can do whatever you want to them. So you can either put down the paint first, as you saw, and then draw a feather on it, cut it out. That's what we had here. Or you can put down draw it, put down the water, the gold. Okay. I loved the colors on this. And I thought they might just really be highlighted by the gold. This is a really difficult one to see the gold. So I'm going to do this. There we go.
Oh.
Yeah, Jen didn't see it
Very
earlier
cool.
when we showed it.
Glynis is being cryptic. She won't tell us how
I
many
know
she's
she's
made
done
so
something
far.
special. She'll post.
I had
She'll
done,
post
yeah.
the pictures. She'll post the pictures, and we'll get to see what she's done. That's a little different than what we've done. I need to whoop on auto correct. Where's my queen? Let's see. Did you see the material is scored? Oh, fabric cover. Ooh, nice. Yeah, that was really cool. That's the only one I did in the gold, and that it was just a gel. Wait a minute. No, that one was not a gel pen. That one was a Posca, a gold Posca pen. Where's the? I don't know. There should be another one that I did with a gold gel pen. I really wanted to try out all these different forms to see what worked. So I've done black and white gel pen as well as this. I like this black one. It's a very fine tip and it works exceptionally well. And it has like a felt tip, so it's not as hard to use as the gel because it doesn't get caught up like the gel does. I don't have to be careful not to press quite as hard. I have used the white Sharpies, and I have used the white Posca. I think those are more of the same in there. So pretty much tried to try out all the things that I could think of that might work. The only thing that I might like a little different on this one is that the lines or designs be a little bit thinner. So that Posca was a little bit thick, but actually it's okay for the size of the feather. It turned out just fine. So this is something that would be super easy to batch make. So you could sit down and cut up your paper, and then you can draw the outline of your feather like we did. And you could do 20 or 30 of them, cut up the papers, draw 20 or 30 feathers, and then go through. Then you have to go through one by one if you're going to do it this way, and put the water on and then do the paint. Set it aside to dry, take the next one, do the water, and then do the paint. One of the critical tips is letting it dry long enough, because no matter what you try to write on on it, if you haven't let it dry long enough, you're going to have issues in that paint. So there are fine tip Poscas. I actually do have one.
I need to invest in one of those.
The fine tip Posca works very much like the gel pen.
Oh,
Yeah.
that frustrating?
Yes.
Oh gosh. Oh, my goodness.
Which is why I didn't bring it out, but yes, but there is.
I think I'm just going to get my opaque white out and a liner brush and do it that way.
If you are, what is the word? If you are comfortable, if you are comfortable with a liner brush like this, these are very fine brush, very fine point there. Then yeah, get your white acrylic paint out and use a white liner brush. You can do that as well. That would probably work.
I bought a little pot of opaque white.
Oh.
And it's a very dense white paint, and it's supposed to go over just about anything.
Yeah, I've seen that.
With one.
That is
I haven't
interesting.
used it much. No, I don't know where I put it, but.
And that might be a time that I would pull out the white ink, the opaque ink, and use with the fine tip liner the ink instead of
instead of a gel pen.
But you could do a gel pen. You could do it with acrylic paint. You could do it with watercolor paint, or watercolor ink, or even acrylic ink. Have some acrylic ink as well. Let's see. Thank you, Jen. We probably do all the feathers on the same paper, let the whole page dry, then doodle, then cut out. So Jen, we talked about a lot of these things before you came on. It kind of depends on what you're going to do with them. I'm going to make a batch for my book club that are bookmarks. And I haven't put an eyelet in there because I'm going to laminate it. So if somebody spills their tea on it, they don't have to worry about it ruining their little piece of art. Then I'll put an eyelet, and then I'll put the tassel back on. But in doing that, I want them all to be 7 by 2. And so I took the piece of paper and cut it down first so I could get the exact amount that I could get, and they were all the same size. So when I cut that, I get a bunch of these. When I draw the feather on it, I know I didn't draw it too big and end up with a 3-inch one or a 1-inch one. So if you are going to fussy cut them out, like the rest of these that I have, then just draw them on the paper. That's what DM and Carrie are doing. So you sure can do that. I had a purpose in wanting to make these into bookmarks, which is why I did pre-cut them. All I did was round the corners. I will on these as well. Now, these could be actually glued onto something to be a bookmark. These could be glued onto something, attached to something to be a belly band. That would be really pretty. It would also be a nice, just generic, not ephemera, but decoration, embellishment. That's the word. A nice embellishment on a page, on a cover. A whole little grouping of them, a little fan of some really pretty feathers would be cool. That would make a nice tuck spot. If you put those on a page and you brought all the quills at the bottom together, got maybe a color combo that worked really well with whatever the book is that you're doing. You could bring a grouping of them, have them come out of a corner, make a corner tuck spot. Bring the base of the quills together, glue them down like that. And then you could put 4 or 5 or however many. Might make sure that the quills are all going the same direction, would make it a little bit easier, but they don't have to be. And if you need to cut a quill off, just cut a quill off, because if they're even layered like that, you're not even going to notice. And you may just put a little embellishment right there where all the quills meet, so you don't even see that little spot. But that would be a super cute tuck right there, whether on the corner or just on the base of a page. And then there you go. Put it right on a page and you could stick things right down in it. Beautiful picture of a bird right in it. I'd probably do a little embellishment of a bird right here at the base where all the quills meet. Put a bird on top of that and use it as a pocket or tuck spot. So anyone want real turkey feathers, please PM me and I'll share with you. Give a great, see you tonight, Ricky. Yes, I would love some turkey feathers. If you need chicken feathers, I'll trade you. Sure, Jen would as well. Also in executive in different sizes and curved feathers. Yes. Doodle away, 4x4 corner in your journal. Yeah, absolutely. When you're doodling, just playing around, you could doodle feathers just for some practice too. So you can draw them, you can do them freehand without having to draw the feather first. Always, for the demo, I wanted to draw them so that you could see them. Otherwise, it's kind of hard not being able to see it. But just remember that the ones that look super dark, by the time you get done, they're not super dark anymore, because you've got all this stuff on top of them. They actually turn pretty light. So I think we're going to go ahead and call it there. Love turkey feathers. We're caught up on chat there. Those are really pretty. Both of you, great artists. I can't wait to see I know Glynis is doing, hopefully somebody else is doing them as well. Sylvia, I know you can draw feathers. Even those who can't draw, like me, not a pen or pencil artists, but are wanting to learn more. This is a super easy one to do because it doesn't require super specific types of things. So can't wait to see what you guys made. Post them in the group. Love to see them, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks, Carrie and DM, for being here.
Hi, guys.
Bye. Thanks for joining us.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.